I never expected my friend's mom to remember my name. Not like that. Not the casual way adults sometimes do when they're trying to be polite. I mean, she remembered it like it mattered. Like she'd been holding it in her mouth all day, waiting for the right moment to say it out loud. Hamza, she said, and her voice didn't rise or fall. It just landed. Soft. Certain. And for some reason, it made my stomach tighten like I'd been caught doing something I hadn't even done yet. It was a normal Thursday. Nothing dramatic. No rain, no background music, no movie lighting. Just the same street outside Bilal's house, the same cracked pavement, the same gate that always squeaked when you pushed it open. I'd come over because Bilal had texted me the night before. Bilal, bye. Mom's making biryani tomorrow. Aya. Free food. I'd stare at the message for a while before replying. Not because I didn't want to go, just because it was easier to say no than to be around people who looked like they belonged somewhere. But I said yes anyway. That morning, I spent 10 minutes deciding what shirt to wear like it mattered. Like anyone would notice. Like I wasn't just another guy in his 20s trying to fill empty hours with other people's lives. When I reached his house, Bilal wasn't even home. I found out after I knocked twice and the door opened slowly. Not Bilal. Her. Annie Sarah. That's what we used to call her. Annie. The safe word. But she didn't look like an Annie that morning. She had her hair tied back loosely, a few strands falling out like she hadn't bothered fixing them. She wore a plain, light-colored shower kameez, sleeves rolled up to her elbows. There was flour on her wrist, like she'd been kneading dough and forgot to wash it off. And she was holding a dish towel in one hand. She blinked once when she saw me. Then her lips curved. Not a big smile. Not even a friendly one. Just a small, private kind of smile that didn't match her tired eyes. Hamza, she said again, like she was testing the sound. I didn't know what to do with my hands. I kept one on the gate for no reason, even though it was already open. Assalamu alaikum, I said. Walaikum assalam. She stepped aside. Kumain. Bilal isn't back yet. Oh, I didn't know. He said, I know what he said. She cut me off gently, then immediately softened. He's always late. I nodded like I understood, even though I didn't. Inside, the house smelled warm. Not like perfume or fancy air freshener. It smelled like onions frying, spices, and something sweet underneath it. Comfort. Familiarity. The kind you don't realize you miss until it hits you. She walked ahead of me, and I noticed her slippers made almost no sound. It was stupid, noticing that, but I did. Sit, she said, pointing toward the lounge. I'll bring chai. I can help, no. She said it quickly. Then she looked at me again, like she realized it came out sharp. You're a guest. I sat down slowly. The sofa was covered in the same printed sheet Bilal's mom always used. A little faded now. The TV was off. The room felt paused. Like everyone had stepped out of their own life for a second. I stared at my phone without opening anything. The screen lit up and went dark again. Habit. There were messages I never sent sitting in my notes app. Half-written jokes. A how are you? To someone who wouldn't answer. A miss you that I typed once and deleted like it was embarrassing to have feelings. I didn't feel lonely in a loud way. Just in a way that made you eat alone even when there was food. From the kitchen, I heard her moving around. A cupboard opening. A spoon tapping against a cup. The low sound of water running. Then she came back with a tray. Chai, biscuits, and a small bowl of something I couldn't recognize. She placed it down carefully, as if the table might break. When she sat down across from me, she didn't pull out her phone. She didn't turn on the TV. She just folded the dish towel in her lap. Once, twice, like she needed something to do with her hands. So, she said quietly, how's university? I shrugged. Fine. She waited. I hated when adults waited. It made me feel like they could see through me. Just normal, I added. Her eyes stayed on me. Not intense, not dramatic. Just present. You look tired, she said. I laughed once, but it came out wrong. Dry. Almost offensive. Yeah, I guess. She nodded slowly, like she'd expected that answer. Then she surprised me by looking down at my hands. My fingers were tapping lightly against my knee, fast enough that I hadn't noticed. You do that a lot, she said. What? The tapping. She smiled again. That same small smile. Bilal does it too when he's stressed. I froze a little. I stopped tapping. I didn't know why it felt intimate. Like she'd just admitted she paid attention. There was a pause, the kind that grows heavy if you don't fill it. But she didn't rush to fill it. She just sipped her chai and watched the steam rise. Then she said, almost like she was talking to herself, "He doesn't tell me much anymore." Her voice wasn't sad, just factual. I looked at her, and for the first time, I noticed the faint lines near her eyes. Not ugly, not old, just lived in. And suddenly I wondered how often she sat in this quiet house alone after everyone left. How often she made food for people who didn't notice the effort. I swallowed. Before I could say anything, her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen, and for a second, just 1 second, her expression changed. Her smile returned too quickly, like someone putting a mask back on. Then she pushed the phone away without answering. "Eat," she said softly. "You're too thin." I stared at her, my throat feeling tight for no reason. Because her smile was warm, but something in it felt wrong. Like it didn't belong to this moment. And I didn't understand why, but I had this sudden, uncomfortable thought. Maybe she wasn't smiling for me. Maybe she was smiling because she was trying not to break. And then my own phone buzzed. A message from Bilal. "Bilal, bro, don't leave. Please stay. I'll explain when I get there." I read it twice. Then I looked up at his mother. She was still watching me, like she already knew. Bilal's message sat on my screen like a stone. "Don't leave. Please stay. I'll explain." I didn't reply. Not right away. Across from me, Auntie Sarah didn't ask who it was. She didn't even glance at my phone. She just kept stirring her chai slowly, the spoon making a soft clink against the cup. That sound felt too loud in the quiet room. "You're waiting for Bilal?" she asked, even though she already knew. "Yeah," I said. "He said he's coming." She nodded once. Then she leaned back slightly, like the topic had been closed. But the air didn't close with it. It stayed open, hanging. She picked up the tray and stood. "Kulme, help me in the kitchen." I hesitated. "It's okay, Auntie. You can." I said help. Her tone wasn't rude, just firm, like she wanted my hands busy so my thoughts wouldn't be. I followed her into the kitchen. The kitchen was warmer than the lounge. Steam fogged the window a little. A pot bubbled quietly on the stove. The smell of spices clung to the walls like the house had been cooking for decades. She handed me a bowl of chopped onions. "Put these in the pan," she said. I stared at it. "I don't really cook. You can add onions." She glanced at me, her eyes almost amused. "You're not defusing a bomb." I let out a small laugh, surprised it came out real. I tipped the onions into the pan. They sizzled immediately, loud and aggressive, and I jumped back without meaning to. She smiled again, that same smile, but now it felt closer, like it wasn't just politeness. She moved beside me and adjusted the flame. Her arm brushed mine for half a second. Not dramatic, not even intentional, but my body reacted like it was. I looked away quickly, pretending I was focused on the onions. "You live alone?" she asked. I shrugged. "Hostile. No family here. My family's in Lahore. And you don't visit. Edo." I paused. "Sometimes." She didn't push. She just nodded, as if she understood what sometimes meant. Sometimes meant money. Sometimes meant awkward silences. Sometimes meant you didn't know how to go home anymore without feeling like a stranger. She wiped her hands on her dupatta and said quietly, "Bilal's father left when Bilal was 16. I turned my head. Oh, it wasn't gossip the way she said it. It sounded like someone mentioning the weather, like it was something that happened, and then the world kept moving. "He remarried," she added, very quickly. I didn't know what to say, so I said the safest thing. "That's hard." She gave a small hum, not agreeing, not disagreeing. Then she reached into the cupboard and pulled out plates, stacking them carefully. "He told Bilal he needed a fresh start," she said, like we were old furniture. Her voice didn't shake, but her fingers paused on the last plate, just for a second. Then she continued stacking, like the pause had never happened. I watched her hands. They were steady, clean nails. No jewelry except a simple ring she didn't wear anymore. The skin on her knuckles was slightly dry, like someone who washed dishes too often. I imagined her standing in this same kitchen at night, alone, rinsing plates that no one thanked her for. And the thought hit me so sharply I almost spoke it out loud. Instead, I said, "Bilal never talks about it." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. He doesn't talk about anything. He thinks silence is strength. Then she looked at me. Her gaze was calm, but it held something else underneath. Something tired. And you, she asked, what do you think silence is? I swallowed. I didn't expect that question. Not from her. I stirred the onions too hard just to have something to do. I think I started then stopped. She waited. I hated how patient she was. It made me feel exposed. I think silence is what you do when you don't want to bother people, I admitted. She didn't answer immediately. She just turned the stove off and leaned lightly against the counter, arms folded. You're not a bother, she said. The words were simple, but the way she said them, slow, careful, made my throat tighten like I was 14 again. I looked at her and suddenly became painfully aware of everything. Her age, my age, the fact that she was my friend's mother, the fact that her house smelled like home and I didn't have one nearby, the fact that her voice made me feel less empty. It was wrong, or at least it was supposed to be. From the lounge, her phone buzzed again. She didn't move this time. She stared at the counter like the vibration was coming from inside her chest. Then she reached out, grabbed the phone, and flipped it over. Face down, like she didn't want to see who it was. My eyes followed the motion before I could stop myself. She noticed. A flicker crossed her face. Not panic, more like embarrassment. She cleared her throat. Set the table. Hamza. I nodded quickly. Okay. As I walked past her, she stepped aside to let me through, and for a moment our shoulders brushed. This time she didn't pull away immediately. Her hand lifted, almost instinctively, and touched my arm just above my elbow. A light touch. Barely there, but it stayed half a second longer than it needed to. Then she let go, like she remembered who she was supposed to be. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. Bilal arrived 20 minutes later, acting like the world hadn't been holding its breath. He walked in with his usual energy, loud keys, loud shoes, loud laugh, like noise could fix anything. Brew, he shouted the moment he saw me. You actually came. I stood up from the sofa, suddenly unsure where to put my hands again. You told me to. Bilal grinned, then looked toward the kitchen. Amy, I told you, nah. Hamza's like family. From the kitchen, Annie Sarah's voice came back calm. Too calm. Wash your hands first. You're not a child. Bilal rolled his eyes and leaned close to me, whispering like we were 15 again. She's been extra strict lately. Mood swings. He laughed. I didn't. Not because it wasn't funny, but because the way he said it, mood swings, made something tighten in my chest. Like he'd reduced her whole life into one careless sentence. I glanced toward the kitchen doorway. She appeared for a second, carrying a bowl of salad. Her eyes met mine briefly. Then she looked away immediately, like she'd been caught. I didn't know why it hit me so hard. That tiny retreat, as if she'd decided, in the space of 20 minutes, that whatever softness existed between us needed to be buried. We ate together at the dining table. Bilal talked nonstop. University drama. A fight with a classmate. Some stupid meme. I laughed when I was supposed to, but I kept noticing things. Annie Sarah barely ate. She kept pushing rice around her plate. She drank water in small sips. Her fingers stayed close to the edge of the table, never relaxed. When Bilal cracked a joke, she smiled politely. Not like earlier. Earlier, her smile had felt private. Now, it was the kind of smile women wear in front of their sons. Safe. Flat. Practiced. Every time I tried to catch her eye, she didn't meet it. Not once. And the worst part was, she wasn't doing it cruelly. She was doing it carefully. As if she was protecting me from something I hadn't asked to be protected from. After lunch, Bilal stood up and stretched. Bro, I gotta run to the shop. I promised Hassan I'd pick up something. You coming? I opened my mouth to say yes. But Annie Sarah spoke first. Let him stay, she said, standing and gathering plates. He hasn't even had dessert. Bilal blinked. Dessert. We have dessert. She didn't look at him. Yes, we have dessert. Bilal shrugged like it didn't matter. All right, I'll be back in 10. He grabbed his phone and left, slamming the door behind him. And just like that, the house went quiet again. Too quiet. Auntie Sarah carried the plates to the sink. I followed without thinking, then stopped awkwardly near the doorway. She turned the tap on. Water rushed. She didn't speak. I didn't either. I stood there watching her wash dishes like it was the most normal thing in the world. Like my heart wasn't beating too fast for no reason. Then she said, without turning around, "You shouldn't stay." Her voice was low, not angry, just final. I swallowed. Bilal said he'd be back. That's not what I mean. My fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. Then what do you mean? She stopped scrubbing. The water kept running. She turned it off slowly and finally looked at me. Her eyes were tired today, not the soft tired from before. This was heavier, like she hadn't slept in days. "Amza," she said, and my name sounded different again. "You're a good boy." I flinched at that word. Boy, it put a wall between us. I tried to laugh it off. "I'm not a kid." She stared at me for a moment too long. "I know," she whispered. And that was the problem. Her gaze dropped to my mouth for half a second. Then she looked away quickly, as if disgusted with herself. She picked up another plate and began washing again, fast now. Too fast. I stepped closer before I could stop myself. "Auntie," my voice came out rough. "Sarah." The name slipped out. Not Annie, just Sarah. Her hands froze. The plate slipped slightly in the sink. She caught it before it fell, but the tremor in her fingers didn't hide. She turned her head just enough to look at me over her shoulder. Her expression was warning, but her eyes were something else. Something hungry, something scared. I didn't move. She didn't either. The air between us felt thick like steam. I could see the small pulse beating at her throat, and I hated myself for noticing. "I don't know what you think you're doing," she said quietly. "I don't know either," I admitted. That was the truth, because it wasn't a plan. It was just gravity. She turned fully this time, her back against the sink, water dripping from her hands. "You're Bilal's friend," she said, like she was reminding herself. "And you're—" I stopped, because I didn't know what she was. A mother, a woman, a lonely person, a mistake waiting to happen. Her eyes searched my face, like she was looking for the part of me that would laugh and say this was all a misunderstanding. But I didn't. I just stood there, breathing shallow. Then she lifted her hand. Slowly, she reached toward my face, hesitated midair, like she was deciding whether to touch me or slap herself back into reality. Her fingers brushed my cheek. Barely. A soft, trembling line of contact. My whole body went still, and then I leaned in without thinking. Just a few inches. Enough to feel her breath. Enough to feel the edge of her restraint breaking. Her eyes fluttered shut for a second. Her lips parted like she was about to say something, or let me. Then the front gate creaked. Footsteps. Bilal's voice outside, loud and careless. "Amy, I'm back." Annie Sarah's eyes snapped open. She pulled her hand away like it burned, and I stepped back so fast I almost hit the fridge. Neither of us spoke. She turned the tap on again, too hard. Water splashed everywhere. And I stood there, staring at the floor, feeling like I'd almost walked into a fire and wanted to do it again. Bilal started calling me over more after that. At first, I told myself it was normal. We'd been friends for years. It wasn't strange to show up at his house, eat his mother's food, sit in their lounge like it was mine. But the truth was, I stopped going for Bilal. I started going because I wanted to see if she'd look at me the way she had in the kitchen. And she didn't. Not at first. For days, she became a different version of herself around me. Polite, controlled, almost cold. She'd greet me with a nod, ask if I wanted chai, and then disappear into her room like she was avoiding a room full of smoke. And every time she did that, it stung in a way that made me feel childish. Like I'd imagined the whole thing. Like that touch on my cheek had been nothing but a mistake. Then one evening, Bilal wasn't home again. I should have left the moment I realized. But I didn't. I stood outside their gate with my hand on the latch, debating with myself like an idiot. The sun was going down. The streetlights had just started flickering on. Somewhere nearby, kids were playing cricket, their shouts echoing off the walls. Normal life. I knocked. The door opened. Auntie Sarah stood there, wearing a dark shawl over her shoulders, hair loose this time. Her face looked paler under the yellow porch light. When she saw me, she didn't smile. Not even that polite one. Her eyes just held mine, steady, tired, like she'd been expecting this. "You came," she said. I swallowed. I didn't know if Bilal was. He's not. Her voice was flat. He's a friend's house. He told me. There was a pause. She stepped aside anyway. I walked in slowly, the air feeling different than usual. Heavy, like the house had been holding something in all day. Inside, the lounge was dim. Only one lamp was on. The TV was off. No noise. No distraction. Just us. She didn't offer tea. That's when I knew something was wrong. She walked toward the balcony door and opened it. Cold air rushed in. I needed air, she said quietly, as if explaining herself to someone invisible. I followed her. The balcony was small. 2 plastic chairs. A dusty plant pot. The city stretched out in front of us. Lights blinking, distant horns. Life happening far away. She leaned her elbows on the railing, staring down at the street like she was counting the cars. I stood behind her, not too close. I didn't want to scare her. Or maybe I didn't want to scare myself. You shouldn't come here when he's not home, she said. I let out a small breath. I know. She nodded slowly, like she was relieved I admitted it. Then she turned her head, looking at me from the corner of her eye. And yet you do. I didn't answer. Because what could I say? Because I think about you more than I should. Because when you don't look at me, my chest feels empty. Instead, I asked the first thing that came out. Are you okay? She laughed softly. Not happy. Almost bitter. I'm fine. I waited. She didn't move, didn't turn around. Just stared at the street, hands gripping the railing tightly. Her knuckles were white. You know, she said, I saw Bilal talking to that girl last week. My stomach tightened. Which girl? She finally turned toward me, and her eyes were sharp now. That's what hit me. Not sadness. Jealousy. And it made me feel sick and strangely warm at the same time. The one from his university, she said. The one who keeps calling him. I frowned. What does that have to do with me? She stared at me like she couldn't believe I could still pretend. Then her shoulders dropped, just slightly, like she'd been carrying something too long. It has nothing to do with you, she said. Forget it. I stepped closer. No, tell me. She shook her head once. Hamzont. But her voice cracked on the last word. That tiny crack did something to me. It made her feel human. Not someone's mother. Not someone's responsibility. Just a woman standing in cold air, trying not to fall apart. I don't like the way you look at me, she said suddenly. My throat went dry. I don't even know how I look at you. She smiled faintly, but it wasn't soft. It was the kind of smile people wear right before they cry. You look at me like I'm still something, she whispered. I didn't speak, because she was right, and she knew it. She took a step closer, the space between us shrinking until I could smell her perfume. Light, clean, familiar. Like laundry dried in sun. Her voice lowered. I'm not stupid, she said. I know what this is becoming. I shook my head slightly. It's not becoming anything. She laughed again, quieter. You think you can stop it by not naming it. Her eyes held mine. That's what men your age do. They act innocent until it's too late. That stung. I wanted to defend myself, but I couldn't. Because part of me was exactly that. Confused, greedy, curious. She looked down at my hands, then back at my face. You're lonely, she said. It wasn't an insult. It was a diagnosis. And somehow, it felt intimate. Then she whispered, almost to herself, and I am too. The street noise below faded. Or maybe my ears just stopped listening. She lifted her hands slowly, not touching me yet. Hovering, like she was standing at the edge of a cliff and wondering what the fall would feel like. Her fingers brushed the front of my shirt, near my chest. I froze. Her breath shook. If you take one more step, she murmured, I don't know if I'll stop you. I didn't move, but my body leaned forward on its own, like my heart had already decided. Her eyes searched mine. One last chance to walk away. And the question hung there between us, unspoken but screaming, would I ruin both our lives just to feel wanted for one night? The next day, I didn't go. I told myself it was maturity. I told myself it was respect. But honestly, it was fear, because the way she'd looked at me on that balcony didn't feel like a mistake anymore. It felt like a door opening. And once a door opens like that, you don't get to pretend you didn't see what was inside. So I stayed in my hostel room. I went to class. I laughed at jokes. I ate cafeteria food that tasted like cardboard. I replied to people late, on purpose. I acted normal. but my mind kept replaying her voice. If you take one more step. And the worst part was, I could still feel the warmth of her fingers on my shirt, like it had left a mark. I checked my phone more than I should have. No message from her, obviously. Why would there be? She wasn't my friend. She wasn't my age. She wasn't even allowed to exist in my life that way. But I still checked. Then, on the third day, Bilal called. "Bye. You've disappeared," he said, half laughing. "What happened? You get a girlfriend or something?" I forced a chuckle. "Nah, just busy. Come tonight. Amy's making kheer." My stomach tightened. Kheer. Sweet. Soft. The kind of thing you ate when you wanted comfort. "I'll see," I said. Bilal didn't notice my hesitation. "Ayar. Seriously." After the call ended, I sat on my bed staring at my ceiling fan, watching it spin like it was trying to race time. Part of me wanted to go. Part of me wanted to never go again. That evening, I walked to Bilal's house anyway. But when I reached the gate, I stopped. The lights were on inside. I could hear voices. A male voice I didn't recognize. Deep, older, calm. I stood there, hand hovering near the latch, and suddenly I felt like a thief. Like I was about to walk into a life that didn't belong to me. The gate was slightly open. I could have pushed it, but I didn't. I stayed outside, leaning against the wall like I was waiting for someone. The voices inside grew clearer. Bilal's laugh. Then another laugh, Annie Sarah's. It sounded different. Not her tired laugh. Not her bitter laugh. A real laugh. The kind she hadn't given me. My chest tightened in a way I didn't like. I looked through the small gap between the curtains and the window, and I saw him. A man sitting in the lounge. Early 50s, maybe, gray at the temples. Clean shirt. Confident posture. The kind of man who didn't need to prove he belonged. He was holding a teacup like he'd done it 1,000 times in that house. Like he'd earned it. Auntie Sarah was standing near the dining table, adjusting something on a tray. She looked composed, smiling, and then she touched his shoulder lightly as she passed him. A casual touch, but it landed in my stomach like a punch. Bilal said something, and the man smiled. Then Bilal called him, Cha-Cha, uncle, not a stranger, family, or something close. My throat went dry. I stepped back from the gate, suddenly ashamed of myself, of my thoughts, of my fantasy that maybe she was lonely in the same way I was. Maybe she wasn't lonely. Maybe she'd just been weak for a second. I turned and walked away without knocking. Halfway down the street, my phone buzzed. A message from Bilal. "Bilal, bro, where are you? You said you might come." I stared at it while walking. I didn't reply. Then another message came. Not from Bilal. A number I didn't have saved. Unknown. "Hamza, don't come back here for a while. Please." My feet stopped moving. I read it again. And again. The word please didn't feel kind. It felt desperate. Like she was trying to put the lid back on something boiling over. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I typed, "Who was that man?" Then deleted it. Typed, "Are you okay?" Deleted. Typed, "I'm sorry." Deleted. Finally, I locked my phone and kept walking. The streetlights blurred a little, but I told myself it was just dust in the air. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. I didn't go back for 2 weeks. Not because I was strong, because I didn't know how to walk into that house again without feeling like I'd been caught wanting something that wasn't mine. Bilal called a few times. I made excuses. Exams. Family stuff. Headache. He believed me, because Bilal always believed the version of reality that was easiest to live with. But at night, when my room went quiet, I kept seeing her hands, the way they shook slightly at the sink, the way they had hovered near my face like she was trying to remember what it felt like to be touched without obligation. One evening after class, I found myself outside their street without planning it. I stood at the corner shop pretending to look at snacks I didn't want. My eyes kept drifting toward their gate. The lights were on. The house looked normal. That somehow made it worse. I don't know how long I stood there before I finally walked up and knocked. Not loudly, just enough. The door opened almost immediately, like she'd been standing behind it. Auntie Sarah was there, wearing a simple gray shawl. Her hair was tied back. Her face looked tired, but cleaner than before. Like she'd made herself presentable for a life she wasn't sure she still wanted. When she saw me, she didn't smile. She just exhaled. a long breath that felt like it came from somewhere deep. Hamza, she said. Bilal home? I asked, even though I already knew he wasn't. No, she replied. He's out. We stood there, me on the doorstep, her inside the frame of the door, a line between us that felt more serious than any wall. I shouldn't have messaged you like that, she said quietly. My throat tightened. It's okay. No, she corrected gently. It wasn't okay. I nodded once because I didn't trust myself to speak. She stepped back. Come in, just for a minute. I walked in, and the house smelled like detergent and cardamom, like she cleaned everything to erase something that couldn't be scrubbed out. She led me to the kitchen. Of course, that kitchen again, the place where everything had started to go wrong. She didn't offer tea this time. She didn't ask if I was hungry. She just stood near the counter, hands clasped together, like she was holding herself in place. I saw you, she said suddenly. My heart dropped. Saw me. That night. Her eyes didn't leave my face. Outside the gate. I swallowed hard. I didn't mean to, I know, she interrupted, softer now. But I saw you. The silence that followed felt thick, like the air had turned heavy. Then she said, that man, he's my cousin. I blinked. Your cousin. She nodded. My mother keeps insisting. She says I need someone. Someone stable. Some my age. Her mouth twisted slightly at the last words. And do you? I asked before I could stop myself. Her gaze lowered to the floor. When she looked back up, her eyes were wet but not crying. I don't know what I need, she whispered. That's the problem. I stood there, hands in my pockets, feeling 20 years old in the worst way. Too young to offer anything real. Too old to pretend I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't come to ruin your life, I said quietly. That made her flinch, because it meant she'd thought the same thing. She took a step closer, stopping just short of me. I'm not angry at you, she said. I'm angry at myself. You still there. Why? Her voice dropped. Because when you looked at me, I felt visible. The words landed softly, but they hit hard. She swallowed, her fingers tightening together. I haven't felt that in years, she admitted. Not as someone's mother. Not as someone's responsibility. Just as me. I didn't know what to do with that confession. It felt too delicate to touch. So I stayed quiet. And somehow, that was the only thing that didn't hurt her. She let out a shaky breath and looked away. This can't happen, she said. I nodded slowly, even though something inside me resisted like a child. I know, I said. She looked back at me. Do you? I hesitated. Then I answered honestly. I know what it is, I said. I don't know how to stop feeling it. Her eyes closed for a moment, like she was absorbing the cost of that. Then she reached out. Not fast, not dramatic. Just her hand, moving toward mine, careful like she was handling glass. Her fingers touched my wrist lightly. A simple touch, a human one. I need you to be kind, she whispered, and leave me alone. My chest ached. I nodded barely. Okay, I said. Her hand stayed there for 1 second longer. Then she let go. And for the first time, she smiled. Not the polite smile. Not the broken smile. A small, tired smile that looked like forgiveness. And I realized that was all we were ever going to get. A touch. A truth. A quiet goodbye. And a soft, unbearable okay. 3 months passed. Not the dramatic kind of passing where everything changes overnight. Just ordinary days stacking on top of each other. Classes. Exams. Laundry. Dust on my shoes. The same bus routes. The same tired sky. But something in me had shifted. I stopped going to Bilal's house. At first, it felt like withdrawal. Like my body kept expecting that street, that gate, that smell of cardamom and detergent. Then it became routine. Bilal complained a little, of course. Bye. You've become boring, he said one day, laughing into his phone. You don't even show up for food anymore. Maybe I'm trying to be healthy, I replied. He snorted. You. Healthy. Chal Judah. And that was it. He didn't know what he didn't know. Life moved on because it always does. Sometimes I caught myself typing her name in my head the way you type a message you'll never send. Sarah. Not Andy. Not Amy. Just Sarah. Then I'd stop myself. Because I had promised. And because she had looked at me in that kitchen like she was trusting me with her survival. I couldn't betray that. Then one morning, 8:47 a.m. I was at a small tea stall near my university. Same plastic chairs. Same cracked cups. Same loud kettle sound. The vendor knew my face by now. He poured without asking. I sat there with my chai, watching the street wake up, and I saw her. At first, I thought my mind had made her up. But no, it was her. Annie Sarah. She was walking slowly, carrying a small cloth bag, like she'd just come from the market. She wore a simple cream shawl, hair tied neatly, and she looked lighter. Not younger, just less burdened. She didn't see me immediately. When she did, her steps slowed. For a second, we just stared at each other across the noise of the street. Bikes passing, horns, a man yelling for customers. And still it felt quiet. She walked toward me. My hands went cold around the cup. I stood up, unsure what was respectful anymore. Unsure what was allowed. She stopped in front of my table. "Assalamu alaikum," she said. "Walaikum assalam," I replied, voice low. She glanced at the chair across from me. I didn't offer it. I just pulled it back silently. She sat. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The chai between us steamed like a memory. Then she said, "Bilal told me you got good marks." I blinked. "Yeah, alhamdulillah." She nodded, as if that was enough. Then her eyes dropped to my cup. "You still drink it like this?" she asked softly. I almost smiled. "Like what?" She lifted her hand slightly, pointing at the sugar packets. "You never add sugar," she said, "even though you always take two." I looked down at the packets beside my cup. I hadn't even realized I still did that. I exhaled a small laugh. "Habit." She nodded again. Her gaze shifted away toward the street. "I stopped talking to my cousin," she said suddenly. My heart stuttered. "Oh." She didn't look at me when she spoke. "He wasn't a bad man," she continued. "But I didn't want a life where I kept choosing what looked correct." She paused, fingers lightly folding the edge of her shawl. That micro-behavior again. The same way she used to fold the dish towel in her lap. "I didn't want to feel trapped," she whispered. I swallowed. "Are you okay?" This time, her smile came naturally. Not tired, not broken, just real. "I'm learning," she said. We sat there in silence, the kind that didn't ache anymore, the kind that felt earned. Then she reached in her cloth bag and pulled out a small thermos. She placed it on the table gently. "I make black coffee now," she said. "Bilal hates it." I stared at the thermos, confused. "You brought it here." She finally looked at me. Her eyes were calm, older than mine, but not afraid anymore. "I was passing by," she said, "and I thought, maybe you'd like it." My throat tightened. "Sarah." She lifted her hand slightly, stopping me. Not harshly, just enough. "Not here," she murmured. I nodded, and that's when I understood. This wasn't a reunion. This wasn't a secret romance. This was something slower, something careful, something grown-up, the kind of love that didn't demand, the kind that waited. I poured her coffee into the paper cup the vendor gave me. She watched quietly, then took a sip. Her eyes softened at the taste. Then she pushed the cup toward me. I took a sip too. Bitter, warm, real. And for the first time in a long time, the loneliness inside me didn't feel permanent. She stood up after a few minutes, adjusting her bag. "I should go," she said. I nodded. "Yeah." She hesitated, then placed her hand on my shoulder. Just once. Just long enough to mean something. Then she leaned in slightly and whispered, so softly I almost thought I imagined it. 8:47, she said. I looked up at her. She smiled and walked away. I watched her disappear into the morning crowd, feeling something settle in my chest. Not heartbreak, not victory, just peace. Because some love stories don't end with a kiss. Sometimes they end with a thermos of black coffee and two people finally learning how to breathe again. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?